Welcome to True Crime Documentaries, and today we're exploring the tragic story of Eliza Fletcher, a dynamic mother, wife, and teacher whose one morning run changed everyone's perception of safety. Eliza Fletcher lived in the beautiful urban area of Memphis, Tennessee, and was a loving kindergarten teacher. She taught at St. Mary's Episcopal School, where her dedication and enthusiasm earned her the affection of both children and parents. Every day, Eliza witnessed countless children blossom with smiles in her classroom, opening the door to knowledge with love and patience, helping them explore the world. Her colleagues often praised her, considering her not only an outstanding teacher, but also a second mother to the children. At home, Eliza was a devoted wife and a caring mother. She lived with her husband and 2 children, forming a warm and harmonious family. As a mother, Eliza always prioritized her children's needs. She would spend time playing and learning with them, pouring her love into every important moment of their lives. On weekends, Eliza often took her family to the park for picnics, biking, or participating in community activities, enjoying the joy of family togetherness. Neighbors knew that this family was always filled with laughter and joy, and Eliza's enthusiasm touched everyone around her. Eliza also actively participated in community activities, believing that family and community were interconnected. She often organized school events, leading students in volunteer work and fostering a sense of social responsibility in the children. Whether it was providing food for the homeless or contributing to local environmental projects, Eliza set an example, encouraging children to care about society and give back to others. People in the community respected her, praising her not only as a good teacher, but also as a model citizen. On the early morning of September 2, 2022, the city of Memphis, Tennessee, was still shrouded in tranquility. 34-year-old Eliza Fletcher woke up early preparing to start her daily morning run. As someone who loved to exercise, jogging in the morning had become a part of her routine. That day, she put on her running shoes and dressed comfortably in sportswear, heading down her familiar route towards the University of Memphis, enjoying the quiet of the early morning. The air was cool and the sound of Eliza's footsteps echoed clearly on the empty streets. She felt relaxed, savoring the peace just before dawn, contemplating her work and her children. She was filled with love for life and anticipation for the wonderful day ahead. This area was one she had run countless times before, and she was already thoroughly familiar with it. The fresh air and warm sunshine made her feel invigorated. However, she had no idea that such an ordinary day would lead to a nightmare. As she focused on her pace, a shadow crept closer behind her. Cleotha Abston, a man with a history of violent crimes, silently followed Eliza. His appearance was abrupt, bringing with it a chilling sense of foreboding. Abston had been incarcerated multiple times for violent behavior since his teenage years, and he had recently been released from prison. The impulses and desires within him churned restlessly. At that moment, he might have been seeking excitement or looking to unleash the darkness that lay deep within. As Eliza's footsteps continued to echo, Abston's pace quickened, gradually closing the distance between them. His mind was filled with sinister calculations, while Eliza remained blissfully unaware of the danger that was closing in. Just as she was enjoying the joy of running, Abston suddenly lunged forward and forcibly grabbed her. Shocked by the sudden attack, Eliza struggled to break free, but Abston's strength far surpassed her expectations. Abston swiftly dragged her towards an SUV parked by the roadside. As the door opened, Eliza's heart raced with fear. She fought back desperately, attempting to escape, but her efforts were in vain. Abston forcefully pushed her into the vehicle, the door slamming shut with a resounding bang, isolating her cries for help. Eliza's world shattered in that instant, and terror, despair, and helplessness intertwined in her heart, as if time had stopped. The air inside the car was heavy and oppressive, leaving Eliza gasping for breath. Abston sat in the driver's seat. The sound of the engine starting was deafening and painful. The SUV sped away from the scene, disappearing into the streets of Memphis. The world outside continued to turn. The sunshine remained bright, But for Eliza, everything had changed. Trapped in that car, she had no idea what fate awaited her. Meanwhile, Abston was calculating his plans in his mind. His actions were not impulsive, they were a deliberate choice. On that clear morning, he had targeted Eliza as if she were the goal of his plan. Abston was consumed by twisted desires, and the violence he was about to unleash was merely a continuation of the life he had become accustomed to in the past. All of this transpired as an extraordinary event in an otherwise ordinary morning in the city of Memphis. Eliza's world was engulfed in endless darkness due to this abduction. Her life was swallowed by a horrifying nightmare, and the future became unpredictable. The tranquility of the early morning could never be restored, and Eliza's story was just beginning. When Eliza's family realized she was missing, they were filled with anxiety and fear. Time passed quietly in the morning stillness, and their worries intensified until they decided to call the police. Upon receiving the report, the Memphis police immediately took action, quickly organizing resources to begin tracking Eliza's whereabouts. The police first accessed surveillance footage from cameras in the area to gather information about Eliza's last known movements. After careful investigation, they learned that Eliza had been captured on camera at 4:20 a.m. near the University of Memphis. In the footage, she appeared to be jogging as usual, but after that, she seemed to vanish without a trace. This discovery heightened the urgency for the police, who knew that time was critical in finding a missing person. Meanwhile, Eliza's friends, family, and community members rallied together to join the search. People posted missing person flyers around the neighborhood, organized volunteer teams, and utilized social media to spread the word. Everyone was eager to provide any leads that could help find the beloved mother and teacher. Hope filled the streets as Eliza's family even made appeals on social media, seeking more assistance. However, as time passed, the results of the search became increasingly disheartening. A few days later, the police finally delivered the devastating news. Eliza's body had been found approximately 7 miles from where she was last seen. This news struck like a bolt from the blue, leaving family and friends in shock, tears streaming down their faces. They could not comprehend that such a loving woman could meet such a tragic fate. Eliza's husband and children faced immense loss. Their lives changed dramatically in just a few days. For everyone, this was not only the loss of a loved one, but also the loss of a family pillar. Community members were heartbroken as well. They could not understand how such a vibrant, life-loving person who actively participated in community events could suffer such a tragedy during a morning run. In the days following Eliza's disappearance, the Memphis police continued to investigate diligently, searching for any possible leads. Just when they were on the verge of despair, new evidence suddenly emerged, providing a breakthrough in the case. Near the location where Eliza was last seen on surveillance, the police discovered a single sneaker, which appeared somewhat worn and seemed to have been dropped during a struggle. The police quickly brought the sneaker back to the lab for DNA testing. After a meticulous analysis, the results showed that the DNA from the sneaker matched that of the suspect, Cleotha Abston. This discovery injected new life into the investigation, prompting the police to act swiftly and begin constructing a solid chain of evidence linking Abston to the case. They understood that finding his whereabouts and arresting him was crucial to solving this case. As the evidence gradually mounted, the police pinpointed Abston's location. They learned that he had not strayed far from Memphis in the days following Eliza's disappearance, and they closely monitored areas where he was likely to appear. After several days of investigation and observation, the police finally identified his hideout. Once Abston's location was confirmed, the police swiftly moved to execute the arrest. They surrounded his residence, ensuring that he could not escape during the operation. When the police stormed into his home, Abston was inside. Faced with the sudden arrival of law enforcement, he showed no remorse, even appearing indifferent. His demeanor only strengthened the police's suspicions, clearly indicating that he felt no guilt for his actions. During the arrest, the police also searched Abston's residence for more evidence. They found several items related to the case, further confirming his connection to Eliza's disappearance. As Abston was led into the police car surrounded by a swarm of media, he remained silent, refusing to speak to anyone. At that moment, he seemed to realize the legal consequences he would soon face, but he still refused to disclose any details about the incident. With Abston's arrest, Eliza's family and friends felt a glimmer of hope upon hearing the news. They wished for a just resolution to the case, and the police's actions offered them some reassurance. While what was lost could never be regained, at least in the face of justice, Eliza's plight would not be forgotten. The police's investigation continued, knowing that although they had apprehended a suspect, uncovering the truth behind the incident would require further effort. Cleotha Abston's dark history began in his teenage years. In 2000, at just 16 years old, he was arrested for a shocking kidnapping case. At that time, Abston was involved in the abduction of a lawyer, forcibly taking the victim into a car and threatening him for ransom. This incident marked his first encounter with the law and planted the seeds for his future criminal career. In court, Abston was sentenced to many years of imprisonment for this kidnapping. Although he served 20 years in prison, this experience did not lead him to repent. On the contrary, his life behind bars seemed to reinforce his inclination towards violence. During his time in prison, Abston not only learned how to survive in a closed environment, but also forged relationships with other inmates who harbored violent tendencies. These associations strengthened his misguided beliefs, leading him to return to a life of crime upon his release. In 2020, Abston was granted parole and re-entered society. However, this did not change his nature. The violent aura surrounding him seemed to intensify. After his release, he did not seek legitimate employment, but instead mingled with marginalized groups, gradually becoming immersed in a life of violence and crime. During this period, Abston's behavior became increasingly brazen, and he seemed to have completely forgotten his past and the crimes he had committed. In the case of Eliza Fletcher, Abston displayed a chilling and meticulously planned determination. He was not merely a random criminal, but a seasoned offender familiar with the intricacies of crime. When he decided to kidnap Eliza, he had thought it through carefully, demonstrating his knowledge of criminal behavior and his terrifying premeditation. He understood how to choose a target, how to execute a plan, and how to navigate potential dangers with ease. It was this unsettling calm that allowed him to act without hesitation before the crime. In the courtroom, Cleotha Abston's indifferent demeanor and the intense clash between the prosecution and defense kept everyone present riveted. The atmosphere was tense and oppressive, as what should have been a place seeking justice became even heavier due to this case. The prosecutor stood at the front facing the jury, emotionally charged and unreservedly expressing his anger toward Abston. The prosecutor began to outline the case, detailing Abston's criminal background and the threat he posed to society. He revealed Abston's past, emphasizing the facts that he had been convicted of kidnapping and other violent crimes. He methodically listed each charge, describing Abston's role in the disappearance of Eliza Fletcher, stressing his cruel actions against an innocent woman. His voice echoed in the courtroom, every word telling the severity of this case. "This is a criminal with a violent tendency," the prosecutor declared angrily. "He shows no remorse. Instead, he exploited his freedom in society to commit violence again. Eliza's life was ruthlessly taken from her, and today we must seek justice for her death." The jury's gaze grew increasingly grave with each of the prosecutor's statements, and the courtroom fell into a hushed silence as everyone awaited the defense's response. The defense attorney stood up, appearing slightly nervous, but quickly adjusted his demeanor, attempting to defend Abston. His strategy was to mitigate Abston's culpability, emphasizing his issues with mental health to leave a sympathetic impression on the jury. The defense attorney mentioned Abston's experiences in prison, attempting to attribute his violent behavior to complex psychological factors, claiming he was affected by past traumas. Although his tone was as gentle as possible, in the face of the compelling evidence presented by the prosecution, these arguments seemed feeble. His voice sounded weak, struggling to convince the jury of Abston's innocence. "We are not defending his actions," the defense attorney stated, "but rather the trauma he has experienced." However, many in the courtroom were not swayed. With each word from the defense, the prosecution quickly countered, highlighting the lack of substantive support for the defense's claims. Throughout the trial, Abston maintained an indifferent attitude, sitting in the defendant's chair with a blank expression, seemingly unconcerned about everything around him. Occasionally, he whispered to his lawyer, but he showed no signs of regret or guilt, and he did not even glance at the victim's family. This demeanor only fueled further anger among many present, intensifying the courtroom's atmosphere. The confrontation between the prosecution and defense continued, with the prosecution consistently presenting more evidence to showcase Abston's dangerousness. Witnesses were called to the stand to recount what they had seen, proving that Abston's crimes were not isolated incidents. Every testimony felt like a heavy blow, leaving the defense increasingly on the back foot. The defense attempted to elicit sympathy, but as the evidence piled up, such efforts seemed increasingly futile. Ultimately, during the courtroom struggle, the prosecution's evidence and arguments gradually gained the upper hand, and the expressions of the jury shifted from confusion to seriousness. Every moment in the courtroom played out like a battle between justice and evil, with the final verdict looming, and everyone awaited that decision, hoping to find a reasonable answer for Eliza Fletcher's tragic fate. As the judge began to read the verdict, the entire courtroom fell silent. One could hear a pin drop. The judge solemnly stated that Abston was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. When the last word was spoken, the expressions on Eliza's family's faces were complex and subtle. While they felt a sense of relief that justice had finally been served, the pain of losing their daughter and wife remained, an indelible mark that could not be erased. Outside the courtroom, the waiting public was also concerned about the verdict. Many were heartbroken over Eliza's tragedy. Community members gathered to mourn the kind-hearted kindergarten teacher, expressing their support and care for the family. They understood that this was not just a sentence for Abston, but a warning to the entire community, reminding everyone to cherish life and be aware of their surroundings. After the sentencing, Abston showed no signs of remorse, maintaining his cold demeanor. He was taken back into custody, while Eliza's family held a brief press conference outside the courtroom. Tearfully, they expressed their longing for Eliza and their hopes for the future. Their voices trembled but were filled with determination, wishing that such tragedies would not befall other families. The case of Eliza Fletcher deeply shocked the Memphis community and sparked a nationwide reflection on public safety issues. Throughout her disappearance and victimization, many people came to realize that threats to life often lurk in our familiar environments. What was once a tranquil morning run was abruptly shattered by sudden violence, leaving many to profoundly question their sense of safety. In the community, individuals began to pay closer attention to their surroundings. People reminded one another and actively participated in safety initiatives. Schools, businesses, and families organized discussions to explore ways to enhance public awareness and preventive measures. Every participant recognized that relying solely on others to ensure safety was insufficient. Everyone had to take responsibility and remain vigilant about their environment. Eliza's tragedy serves as a stark reminder that evil can occur when we least expect it. Life goes on, but we cannot forget her story. This case is not only a trial of violent crime, but also a wake-up call for each of us to reassess our lifestyles. People hope that this incident will foster more dialogue and action regarding safety to ensure that similar tragedies do not happen again.